Grow Great is a city government leadership podcast with Lisa Norris and me, Randy Cantrell. Each week we share insights, experiences, and wisdom to help you and your leadership grow great. Our website is growgreat.com.
I'm working on a huge
welcome
project.
back, first of all.
Oh, thanks.
People been
Did y'all
inquiring,
miss me?
Where's Lisa? Where's Lisa? Why isn't Lisa there? Like, she's coming back. She's coming back. I've told them
They
that
didn't
you're
like.
just
They
busy.
didn't like your pretty face by
No,
itself,
well,
Randy.
listen, no, I'm much better without video. It's a voice to be heard, a face not to be seen.
Oh, well, I'm
told
sorry.
And of course, everybody in our audience, let me be snarky. Nobody in our audience can relate to being busy and having a packed schedule. So it was like, well,
not.
Lisa, she's got all the time in the world. Why isn't she on? I'm like, it's a meeting. It's a meeting intensive culture, which is kind of going to be the topic today, but go ahead.
Yeah, it is a meeting intensive culture. And I missed everybody. Randy, I missed your little shining, smiling face that gets no sleep.
Yeah, my beanie.
Yeah, and your beanie. We are getting
beanie.
into warmer weather. Surely those are going to come off at some point.
Well,
it was 86 yesterday, Randy.
Well, not here. It wasn't.
Oh, wasn't?
No, it was warm, but at night, the barometer is
cool.
Once it's into the 60s consistently at night, but no, we're still down in the 50s at night. So at night the head gets cold.
And that's cold to you?
It is when you have no hair on your head. Yeah.
I sweat at 50. Whether it's my hot flashes or just, I don't know. But anyway, well, I'm glad to be back. Certainly missed you guys. Just got buried in life at work with all, we're implementing a major software for HR, payroll, finance. We're implementing like 21 modules. It's a huge citywide project with a bunch of different departments enrolled. And we've had some challenges that I'm helping navigate. So, which leads us to the conversation today, actually. And Randy and I were talking before we clicked record about the challenges in meetings and whether it's trying to get them on track, whether it's they're going well, not going well, and navigating that. And I said, you know what, that's a great topic, because when we're on this big project, I've got city staff, I've got people at high levels in these other organizations. You've got an implementer, you've got a project manager on the city side, you've got an engagement manager on the implementer side, you've got executive sponsors then on each of those, like their bosses that are included. And then you've got our city staff that are high level, high performers, directors, et cetera. And then we have a project manager on our side that's a city employee. And if any of you have implemented an HR, payroll, finance, purchasing, legal, contracting system, we're doing everything pretty much. It can get really challenging, and we're in the front end of that, of just trying to navigate where we're at and where we should be, and then navigating a bunch of different personalities when you have like 10 people on the call. And so I think what was interesting as we went through this, and I've had to get what I call into the weeds, where I'm normally an executive sponsor just checking in monthly. It has not been that. I've been involved every day, multiple meetings a day on different topics to see how it's running and how it's working, to really get a heartbeat of where we're at. And I city staff will give me not intel as in secretive, but they'll say, hey, we're having trouble on this or this, or I feel rushed and I don't feel like I understand what's going on, but I feel like I can't pull the brakes back, things like that. So I kind of pop in and see what the tone and environment feels and looks like during the meetings. And as we got through this, there was some turnover, which adds another layer of challenge. So they had turnover on the implementer side. They had turnover on the project manager side that we had just hired. All of this happening in March. So we're 5 months into the project. Through that turnover and through the gain of a new project manager on our side, on the a hired project manager team consultant, They have knowledge of this software product, and for the benefit of the group, it's called Workday. But all that to be said, they're like, well, where's this and where's that? That should be a standing item. And I said, well, we haven't seen that yet. And they're like, what do you mean you haven't seen it yet? So she was educating me, and then I was talking with the implementer, and they're like, yeah, we have that posted here. Well, we go out there, and ultimately we find as a team, there was turnover at the implementer side, and through that turnover, things were shown either completed or mostly completed that hadn't been completed. Now, whether they thought it was completed, whether they thought they had shared it, whether they posted it and didn't tell us, we don't know any of that because that person's gone, but we all discovered it. So now the challenge has been over the last 6 or 8 weeks. I have paid an invoice, significant invoice, that section, that phase was complete. To find it was about 16% complete. And so we've been working as a project team going, okay, regardless of the turnover that happened, how do we navigate through that and get it done? Because now I paid an invoice, and I told them we're not moving past this until it gets done, because I've already paid for it to be done. But we have a deadline to meet at the end of the day, and it's running fast and furious. As we start navigating this, personalities start coming out. So we're meeting hours a day trying to get these things knocked out. Personalities start coming up and conflicts start arising. And through those conflicts, I'm quickly seeing that it's now everybody's got a mission and a purpose. The reason they're passionate about it and the reason they're digging in their heels and being adversarial is valid. They feel this way. The other person feels this way, and this item's more important. The other person feels this item's more important, and they both start trying to navigate to get that item done. So ultimately, fast forward over 6 weeks, it's gotten more adversarial, and instead of, I could have just kept pushing through going, okay, what do we have done? What do we have done? Instead, I had to stop. Yesterday, we were on the meeting. I said, everybody stop. We cannot keep running at this level. I know literally things are due on the 30th of April. So we're days away, and we're at like 30% complete now. So we've got a long way to go, but I think a lot of items are really close. We just can't mark them that close yet, because I want to see them posted. I've set my line in the sand of, I want links on this one place. I want these things knocked out, these percentages. It needs to be 25% when you provide us something, 50% when we're reviewing it, 75% at X. And we set this, here's what we're going to do to make sure we're all on the same page. All that to be said, there's value in stopping a meeting and aligning the troops, because we were getting nowhere with everybody in their silos working independently on what they felt was important. So yesterday in the meeting, it was about, I said, we have got to stop working in these silos and working for ourselves, for our item, and dismissing the other person or battling it to get what I think is important fixed. I said, guys, the bottom line, all of these items, not just yours, have to be done by 4:30, or I'm not signing off and the project will stop. We will halt. I said, does everybody understand my expectation? And so they're all in the camera. I mean, they're all listening, and they're like, okay, we get it. And I said, from this point forward, I want us working as a team for each other, not just to mark it off on the project plan, but actually working for each other. And I laid it out that I want you to find a yes. It doesn't have to be the yes, but I want a yes towards the project. If the city asks for it, I am the client. Don't just say no and then shut it down and tell me why we can't do it. What I'd like you to do is say, okay, we can consider that, but here's the impact: pros, cons, cost, timeline, change order, whatever. Just give me options, right? And then secondly, if you are set on something, you're not listening. We're not listening to the other person. So when you say they're getting frustrated and they're adversarial, is it perhaps because we're not listening and we're dismissing them and saying, okay, can we just focus on this? Because you're immediately telling them that's not important, but they brought it up for 6 weeks. It is important. So I went in and then said, okay, now for tomorrow's meeting, we have a 4-hour meeting set for tomorrow, for Friday. And I said, bring your most important items. And we're going to go to each person and work one of your most important items. So everybody's items are important. We're going to go around the horn. We're going to work that item till it's done. Not saying it's not important when you get this done. They all have to be done by 4:30. And then once we go around, we get all those worked out in this 4 hours. Then we will come back to the project plan and work through all the remaining items that we should be able to tick off the list, get links done, get things done. And I said, we have got to start working for each other, not against each other. And we've got to get out of our silos, and we're working on what Cognizant thinks is important, what Skians thinks is important, what Lisa thinks is important, what our project manager thinks is important. Right now, it's what is important to all of us. And how about we do those? And as a team, I felt like it unified them. And we had a pretty new project manager that had just joined us in the last few weeks. And I thought it was good insight. His insight, he said, you know what? I have to speak up. I know I've only been on this a few weeks, but it's so nice to hear that we're resetting as a team, because I can tell you, it's not been a good environment. Everybody says they have our best interest at heart, all of us for the project, but they're not acting like it. So kudos to us trying to restate that we are a team and we need to be acting like a team. We're the highest level. We're running the entire project. If we can't get along and do a good job for everybody, then how are the rest of our teams going to feel? Because we're the top echelon. We have to move this together or they're going to feel the impact. And so that took an hour. And were we checking off the things that were urgently due? No. But I suspect through realignment and hopefully getting us aligned and moving forward as a team, it will be more productive on the outcome. And that's so important, I think, when you're looking at this. Sometimes you just have to stop and get the troops back aligned and hold them. And I told them, I'm going to hold you accountable. I said, I will. Does everybody understand? I'm firm. You're never going to hear me get upset. I just don't operate that way, but I will not sign off. Does everybody understand? The project will stop if we're not done by 4:30. And everybody was like, yes. And I said, okay, I don't want there to be surprises on 4:30. And you say, okay, we can do those later. That is not going to happen. Everybody understand? I said, now, if we agree that these 5 items need to move to the next phase, that's fine. But we're not going to move everything just because we didn't get to it. And so meetings are critical, but not just to check off boxes. Sometimes you do have to get everybody back on the same page. And it's hard sometimes with personalities that are in conflict. And I had to talk to individuals. After that meeting, I had to talk and go, I know you're passionate about it, and I love that. You're working on behalf of the implementer and what you believe is important, but also the other person, they're fighting for the same things, that just for a different. I'm still the client for everybody. I need us working together. Does everybody understand? Because I understand why you're passionate about what you're passionate about, but you're passionate and your lens is focused on this one path. We have to do it together. And they all seem to, we'll see, but I think they all seem to align and appreciate it and agreed to. I had to share a little bit about our culture because I told them they are an extension of us. And raving fans, let me tell you what that means. That means finding a yes. That means what is the best interest of the project? And maybe we have to stretch it out 3 months, but let's at least look at it. Don't just get so fixated. This is the time frame. Do we need to extend it? So there was a lot of that going on. And Randy, I'm sure in your life being CEOs that I feel confident you've had to experience that. In coaching, you've probably had to get people back when they're kind of veering off in a different direction. But that was my experience, and we'll see how it's working. But it's been boiling, and I've had to say it a couple times, but this time it was really firm. And I took the attention from the room and basically said, hold on, I'm talking. Everybody needs to listen because we are so far off track at this point, just as a team. I feel I'm very hopeful we're going to get everything done, but I'm hoping that reset is helpful.
Well, and it speaks to the point, different meetings serve different purposes.
Mhm.
So here's a meeting that Lisa's described as kind of a lapel shaking moment
I
that
call it a
she,
come to Jesus.
yeah, that she provided for people. I've only described it as this metaphorical shaking people by the lapels. I don't encourage you to physically do that, but mentally and emotionally, sometimes we need to do that, because until something really gets our attention, it doesn't get our attention. But one of the first things that I thought of as you were telling that story is just the understanding that we're a team, that we can get this done together, not only quicker and easier, but better. There was a study done. A professor did it. I'm sure I'm going to butcher the details. You can Google it and find it. And he took balloons and he had every student write their full name on the balloon.
Oh, I think I remember this.
Put all the balloons in the hall and told everybody
Yeah.
go find your own balloon. And of course, it was just an impossible task.
Chaotic.
Yeah, there were just thousands of balloons, and trying to find yours was like a needle in a haystack. And then he got everybody together and he said, just go pick a single balloon and now go find that person. And within 5 minutes, everybody had their own balloon. And so it just speaks to the spirit of cooperation, which admittedly under pressure, like you've described with this project, something as massive as this, and any of us who've got any time at all in the workplace have likely experienced big ERP system changes and things, and everybody has the same story to tell. These are, for some reason, these are just incredibly painful ordeals.
Right.
I remember years ago thinking, man, if I had the smarts and the resources, I could put some of these people out of business, because I'm real fanatical about client experience.
Mm-hmm.
My experience is most of these companies are not. I'm not judging anybody that you've mentioned. Don't know. But teamwork. The other is the purpose of the meeting. This has been a topic Lisa and I were discussing before we started the show. Our conversations tend to be thematic based on what's going on with us in the moment. So much of what Grow Great is just, hopefully it's insight and helpful for you, but it's largely a journey of documentation of what Lisa and I, separately or together, what we're experiencing.
Right.
And for the last few weeks, I've just had countless conversations about effective meetings. How can I have more effective meetings? The meetings aren't working. They're not working for me. And you hear from executive leadership teams, and they say, man, the meetings just are not, they're just a time suck. They're just not productive. They're not accomplishing anything. And how can I be better at that? How can I contribute better in meetings? So I've just outlined for people, and I'll outline it here for our audience, and we can talk about this. There's 3 components historically that I have used, and that is, A, who is the meeting for? And sometimes the meeting is for the leader. Sometimes the meeting is for the people that are in the meeting. I took a lead from a military source many years ago. I've got no military experience, and I had devised a 1-page kind of a document that served to help me not just lead effective meetings, but just help me get work accomplished. And at the top of this page, I would ask my direct reports to give me the 3 things that I just need to know. 3 things up to 3 things that I need to know lest I be blindsided. Nothing that required any action on my part, but just informative things. And then at the bottom of the page, give me 3 things, up to 3 things that you need from me. Now, I met with my direct reports twice a week. And so every 3 or 4 days, we were meeting for 90 minutes or more. So give me 3 things that you need from me before our next meeting. That becomes my to-do list. And rather than have everybody in that meeting dissect those and go through those, because, if you give me 3 things and somebody else gives me 3 things and your 3 things got nothing to do with theirs, I'm not going to waste your time. That can be handled between the 2 of us. So they had to turn those into me in advance of the meeting, and that gave me some time to look at it from a higher level view.
Right.
And I could determine, there are some commonalities here. There are some things that would be wise for us to bring to the group, and we could avoid the other things.
Yeah.
So A is who is that meeting for? Well, that meeting was for all of us. That meeting was for them to tell me what they needed from me, where they were stuck, that I could help them get unstuck, for them to inform me of things that I could be blindsided by if they didn't tell me, and also things to help them move forward and give me kind of my to-do list. B, what's the point? What's the point of the meeting? You described a meeting, and the point of that meeting was to reset. The point of that meeting was a correction.
Mm-hmm.
The point of that meeting was to get us all back on track. C, what outcome is needed? So who is this meeting for? What's the point of this meeting? And what outcome do we need from this meeting? Personal opinion and commentary here. I think too many times leaders conduct meetings, and that meeting is solely for the leader. The leader's not thinking about the people in the room. The leader's not thinking about the people at the table who might need to communicate some things, say some things, ask some things. And as a result, and the reason I know this is because there are many times that I will mirror a client and I will attend meetings with them, especially early on. And it's kind of fascinating to just be a fly on the wall and to watch and to listen and pay attention to how often a leader just holds forth. I'm not saying there's not a place for that. There's a time and a place for a leader to kind of mount a pulpit and preach a sermon. But if every meeting you have as a leader is you preaching a sermon, I'm just going to be bold and tell you, you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
Because your people are going to just sit there and staring at their shoes, and they're not going to participate. And a big elephant in the room for me, in my experience, is people put too much pressure on a meeting to accomplish too many things. We need to get this down as narrow as we can and not put too much pressure on a meeting to, it's going to do this, that, and the other. No, yeah. Let's figure out what the this is that it needs to do, and let's get that done.
Randy, did you ever have when you were asking them, and I suspect since you met more than once a week with your leaders, did you find that there were times they didn't have anything they needed from you that in that meeting, or was there always something
sure.
they needed from you?
No.
Yeah, that's what I was suspecting. Okay.
No, and I didn't have a hard fast rule of limiting it to 3 or demanding that it be 3. 3 was
just what do you need from me?
Yeah, that was intended on my part to not put too much pressure on knowing that 3 days from now we're going to meet again.
Right.
And keep in mind, it's not like somebody couldn't something bubble up and somebody come in my office and say, hey, I got this situation and I need help. It's not like, no, this is not our meeting time. I didn't do that.
Right.
So this was a constantly moving, evolving kind of a thing. But sure, there were times where they didn't have anything to report. There was no intel that nothing's going on that you don't already know.
Right.
And so that would happen. It did a bunch of things for me. It held me accountable as a leader, which was important to me. For me as a leader, it was important that the people I was meeting with held me accountable.
Right.
And that wasn't me being self-deprecating. That was just, I need to know what you need from me. Right. And my commitment to you is whatever you tell me, whatever you put in writing that you need from me, that will be done before our next meeting. Right. That's my commitment to you. And I wanted the group to hold me accountable to that. And they did, because I was going to hold them accountable. If I gave them marching orders to have something done on a Monday, have that done by Thursday, yeah, I'm holding you accountable too.
Mm-hmm.
So it was mutual. And frankly, the biggest thing for me as a leader was I just wanted meetings to be filled with truth tellers.
Yeah.
We have so many meetings today. Organizations have so many meetings and nobody's telling the truth.
Yeah.
I don't mean they're lying, but nobody's got the courage
To bring out an issue, to
No.
say, hey, what are we doing?
No,
Yeah.
people are just staring at their shoes. Largely, in my experience, and even high-performing companies and organizations, leaders have a meeting, and there is a point in preaching a sermon. It does contribute to culture building, but I have not found any leader who could build a culture simply by preaching sermons.
Right.
I'm not saying it can't be done. I just haven't seen it.
Right.
I've seen where leaders can preach micro sermons to make their point, to let people know what's important to them, and then to get a lot of collaboration, a lot of input, a lot of engagement from the room. At Grand Prairie, we did a couple of weeks ago in one of our sessions, Grand Prairie, at Lisa and her boss, Cheryl, at their lead a couple of years ago, they brought a project in-house to try to develop leadership. And we did an exercise a couple of weeks ago, and the focus was curiosity. Picture a room of, I don't know, what are you guessing, Lisa? 50 people, give or take?
Yeah, there's about, in that class, about 40. Yeah.
So you got 40 people. These are people from all over the city. And these are people that are frontline people. These are people that are in the middle of the organization. These are people that are close to the work being done. There's a few directors in there. I mean, it's a hodgepodge of people and different departments. And
Existing leaders of
Yep.
some level.
And an existing manager brought a problem. We surveyed the room and took a sampling of the problems. Now, this is not your typical meeting because there's 40 people in the room.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it'll illustrate the point. Stay with me. So we kind of put him on the hot seat. He had a particular problem. He addressed it a certain way. He expressed it a certain way. I write that on the whiteboard. And in 45 minutes of just asking questions, the room lit up.
And
The
that's
room-
all we allowed them to do. It was framed.
Yep.
You can't provide solutions. You could only ask questions to seek knowledge,
Yeah, we're just
to
trying
understand the issue.
we're trying to understand this issue, and we're trying to help this manager make sure that he's seeing it correctly, that the problem he thinks he has is really the problem he has.
Right.
And in 45 minutes, not only did we get to that, we kind of sort of dipped our toe in the water of some suggestions of things that he could do. Keep in mind, this is a group of people who had no expertise in his particular field, and his particular field happened to be water.
Mm-hmm.
So it was sanitation, public health. It was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't need a room filled with, which just proves the point. Who's the meeting for? That meeting of 40 people was for him. We were all there to serve him.
And it was it was great because it changed his initial statement of what he believed to be the problem. I remember that, and I think the audience remembers. And he said basically, I'm not going to say how he framed it, but he basically said, "Well, you know what?"
4 times before we finally got to it.
And I think he finally said, "You know what? I think this might be partly just my perception.
Yeah.
I think this might be my own internal belief bias."
Right.
That may be framing a lot of this. And I was talk about courage in a room of 40.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it was such a productive, fruitful conversation. Show why curiosity counts. If you're brave enough to ask and brave enough to answer honestly, we made so much. I just thought it was in fact, we were supposed to do other activities, and we called an audible. And said, let's
we
keep
completely
going.
blew the agenda of the session. Yeah, but
But they were so engaged.
the point is a meeting can look very
Right.
different. So here's a
Right.
meeting in a big room filled with a lot of people, people that don't work together. Some people who they got no clue who the other person is. I mean, Grand Prairie's a big city, so it's not like, a small city where everybody can know everybody's name.
Sure.
And yet, everybody knew in that moment we're here for him. And here's the big elephant in the room. But everybody else benefited. The people that were asking the questions who didn't have a dog in this hunt, other than the fact that they are Grand Prairie employees and they clearly want Grand Prairie to look good, and they are Grand Prairie proud, as current CMO is exemplifying, they all benefited from it.
Mhm.
I haven't talked to them all, but I've talked to enough of them to know they all got huge benefit from it, even though they weren't necessarily kind of in the hot seat and recipient of it.
Even at the director level, I had a director call me and said, "What a fantastic session." That he said, "It opened my eyes." And I said, "Well, great. That's, so when you have high performers from your operation supervisors up to a director and telling us what a great session that was, you see how valuable, because you're wondering, is it valuable to them? Do they see the light? But that one, I mean, I think we had 5 or 6 hands go up at the same time, and we had to just go around the room methodically to get to everybody. So they were extremely engaged, which tells me it was impactful, I think, for everybody, to your point.
Yeah, and it was all over the room. The questions were coming fast and furious all over the room. Normally in those exercises, when I do it, people are very quick to try to couch a solution as a question. And we were minutes in before that first reared its head, and I called it out, and we all kind of chuckled about it and moved on. But the point is, a great meeting. So in this case, here's a great meeting, lasted 45 minutes, give or take. And that meeting was for one individual, and yet we all benefited. Everybody in the room benefited. What was the point? The point was to help this person. Are they seeing it clearly? And the point was also for us as participants, do we understand? We see and we hear how he framed it, but what does that mean? And how can we understand it? C, what was the outcome needed? The outcome needed was for us to try to help this manager figure it out, not to do it for him and not to put him on the spot and say, well, you ought to do this and you ought to do that. Just some suggestions of things that he might consider as he goes on to navigate this and try to figure out what should he do? What could he do?
And I think as we navigated it, he kept, I think the room, what I thought was pretty interesting is what they believed to be a simple statement at first. The more questions they asked, the more they're like, oh, because they didn't have that. They don't have shifts that get on call. They don't have people that are getting their holidays interrupted. They're off, office staff are off on the holidays.
There were a lot of nuances to this whole thing.
Yes.
It wasn't as cut and dried as it first appeared to most
Right.
people, I think, in the room.
I think they were all benefiting that this is way more complex. This isn't and it was interesting as we dove in, and I'm sure many in the audience, there were people that were like, well, you just need a policy on that. And he's like,
Right.
well, we can do a policy on it, but it doesn't make it feel any better to the person getting called in on Thanksgiving and Christmas morning.
Yeah.
Like a policy that you have to show up doesn't make you feel any better about it. So could we do a policy? Yeah, we could. We have a policy. Policy
Yeah.
doesn't fix the problem on state, So it was just very interesting dynamics and they were like, okay. Because there were some you could tell were very black and white. If you set
Sure.
the policy, everybody has to comply with the policy. Well,
That's right.
We're humans. It's never that easy, right?
No, I think in city government, I think that is a little bit of a good example of answering kind of my 3 questions. Who is this for? What's the point? And what is the outcome needed? And we weren't putting a lot of pressure on this session, this meeting, if you please, to accomplish too many things. We really only had one mission, and that is to clearly understand what this person is trying to accomplish so that we can move forward to try to help them figure it out.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I think too many times we've got meetings that are on our calendar. They may be on our calendar every week. They may be on our calendar every other week or every month. And it's just, to your point, we're just checking the box. We're
Right.
having a meeting to have a meeting. We really don't know why we're having a meeting. Nobody's prepared for this meeting. And in other cases, we're having a big, heavy meeting, and everybody should come prepared. And we've got 100 things that we're trying to get this meeting to accomplish.
Right.
And it's kind of fascinating to me that we spend so much time, especially in city government. I know of no culture that is more meeting intensive than city government.
Yeah.
There may be. I've spent my life in the private sector, and there's plenty of meetings, but not like you guys have to endure.
Yeah.
And I would like to contribute to help make these meetings more productive, more positive. And come on, Grow Great is all about high performance. Lisa and I are trying to contribute in some small way to helping city government leaders, not elected people, staff, operational people, be more effective and create a culture that can facilitate high performance. And very few things will just suck the life out of an organization than inane meetings that nobody gets anything from.
Right.
And it just kills engagement, and it kills truth telling. It just kills culture. And yet it could do just the opposite of those things if we could figure out a way to get that right.
Yeah, it is so interesting because I just like you said you've had numerous meetings over the last few weeks, and same here. It's been the focus on the meetings recently. I don't know if it's pace. I don't know if it's just lack of understanding, but I have had multiple conversations over the last few weeks that are fairly intense, trying to help an individual see they don't see what I see from them.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to help them understand, much like this meeting that I had, guys, we are not working as a team. They feel like we are a team. I said, but that, a team and a high performing team are two different things. A team can have bodies, but if you're not working towards the same vision and mission and accomplishing it with everybody's best interest at heart, it's really not a team. You've just got a group of individuals working on independent goals. And that is not what we're talking about. And even when I've had individual conversations to the same point, I've had conversations that went very long of working with individuals going, in both cases, people they're responding, they're listening to respond. So as soon as something happens in their head, they're like, okay, here's how I can defend that. I can defend this, and I need to let them know I'm doing this and this and this. But they aren't listening to the other person's perspective and why that's important, why they're pressing, why it's a full court press on that topic. Instead, they're like, yeah, okay, well, we can do that. Or we need to do this instead. That one's not important. We need to go here. This is what we're trying to accomplish. Well, why don't we find out why that person is on a full court press? Why don't we try to understand and say, okay, you are really passionate about this. I'm missing something. How can we help you with whatever that is? What do you need from us? And that wasn't happening. And I've had another conversation with an individual, not a group, the same thing going, okay, I don't think you're not hearing and listening to what I'm telling for you that will benefit you. You've got to understand, I have your best interest at heart. It may not feel like that, but I genuinely am trying to help you understand how others perceive the interactions. And if you don't listen to me, it's not going to get better, because I'm telling you the feedback I'm getting, not from one, from many. And if you don't absorb this and try to understand what I'm seeing and what they are seeing, so we can make you stronger as a performer in that one area, we're just, you're just spinning your wheels. It's not going to get better. And those conversations are hard, but they're critical. You talk about crucial conversations. You have to have those conversations in meetings sometimes. You have to find out and be able to see through EQ skills what is not going well generally to make the team more productive on the output and get everybody on the same page. And that's where I think I find so often people are just worried about getting that item done and checked off and moving forward, but you're not helping your team become a team and working together for each other. I've seen it over and over, Randy. I don't know about you. Over and
Oh,
over.
sure.
Everybody's working on their individual, the thing that they need to get done, not what the team needs to get done, and saying, you know what, my stuff can set aside for a minute. This is a crisis for another person. They're like, mine's done. I mean, I even had that happen before. Well, I've finished mine. I've finished mine. I don't know about her. I'm like, okay, now how did that help any? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And they don't see it. You kind of got to help them see the light privately, where you can. And honestly, some are very receptive and some are very resistant. And you can quickly tell high performers every time will self-reflect and work to get better. They may
Well,
not
and
like what they heard, but
That's
they will
right.
get better.
and your situation is territorial, and it's multiple constituents sitting at the table who've
Right.
got a vested interest in, I mean, they got their own dog that they're hunting with,
Sure, of course.
and so
It becomes more challenging.
yeah, so there's a lot of blame gaming and all of that kind of stuff. I'm curious, before we dismount today, as a leader, meetings with direct reports. So you as a leader conducting a meeting, which is kind of largely on my mind, and what that looks like and what you've learned over the course of your career.
For me, actually, you helped a lot. I kind of took what you provided. This is early on in our relationship. You gave me that. I didn't really have one-on-ones. Now I made it my own. It was a good framework for me to rethink that. What I love and what I wasn't doing, was what can I do for you? To your point, and I've been a leader a long time. Now I always have the best interests of my people, but I didn't ask them. I would try to say, during other meetings, okay, how can I help you? You're under stress. How can I help you? But I didn't do it at the one-on-one meetings. And frankly, I've lost sight of that a little bit now when you just restated that. I'm like, man, I need to do that again, because we're so focused on what's going on. And I've talked a lot about, it's hard for them to understand sometimes the blind sides. What I don't ever want is to be blindsided, because I want them to look good. I want me to look good. I want our city manager to look good. So blindsides are never good for anybody, because if you don't know something's going on, they feel like you're not communicating. So trying to stress that has been helpful. But as it's changed over time, I try to frame it, because I'm in a different role over the last year and a half now. I'm not the director over my team with my authority to control in that environment what's going on in my department. Now I'm over multiple departments and they have directors that are in control of them. So it's a different layer and a different approach. So for them, I've always told them, just give me the top things going on, kind of like you said. Now they do many more than 3. Because I always tell them I need to know council items that could be controversial, adversarial.
Well, you're also not meeting twice a week.
Right, exactly. We do meet once a week, though. I
Yeah.
have a weekly with most of them except airport, because it doesn't have enough. He always brings stuff up to me if there's anything critical
But
that's
now, are
happened.
these one-on-one, or are these you with all of them?
No, it's me one-on-one.
Okay.
I honestly don't do a group meeting because they're all in such different areas.
Right.
But we just go over what's going on in your area. What are
Yep.
the top things?
Yep.
Any council items that are controversial, any things that are escalate that would get to council, like anything critical going on where there's going to be a
Mhm.
complaint. And then just generally, what projects are you working on? And then I always ask, how's your team doing? How's anything with the team that we need to know, and celebrations. It's just kind of an open dialogue, but I do need to add back in, what do you need from me? They typically will tell me during that conversation, hey, I sent you an email. Can you be sure and look at that? Because I'm kind of buried.
Well, you've heard my
but
analogy.
those have evolved over time, and they are
Sure.
different than when I was a director.
Well, you've heard my analogy. So Rhonda and I have been married 47 years, and it's like, well, I could, I think she would like this, or I think this would make her happy. I mean, I can guess at it all I want, and you would think, okay, well, after 47 years, and prior to that, 2 or 3 years dating, I mean, we've been a couple since we were 18. So, I mean, come on. How well, I mean, if you don't know her by now, but still things change, preferences change. So it's like, okay, a husband, you can try to please your wife by guessing, or you could just ask her. You could just find out,
Yeah.
and the same thing applies at work with people. I just fixate. I do this. I obsess about things. And I've just seen meetings completely shoot the wheels off an otherwise good leader, but they just don't know how to conduct great meetings. And it pains me. It just it pains me that it's not that military. I ran into a retired general, and he's been tasked with mentoring other generals around the globe. He's retired, and it's part of a mentorship program. Kudos to the military for doing such things. And he and I were visiting, and he was telling me he'll mirror, say, a general who's having a meeting with the executive staff. And in keeping with military tradition, those meetings tend to be for staff. But he said, I'll go in, and after the meeting, we'll sit down and we'll kind of break down that meeting. And he will tell, say, a one-star general, you did too much talking. They didn't do enough talking. This meeting wasn't for them. This meeting needed to be for them. This meeting was, for you. And wrong point for the meeting. Now, that's in their context. And I'm sure that there are meetings that the military has, just like you and your city have. Some meetings are for different people. So Lisa started this show by describing a meeting that was primarily for the city of Grand Prairie, but it was for everybody involved in this massive, major, expensive project, because there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, because
what's in it for me?
Yeah, this is that big of a project. You need a lot of cooks in the kitchen, because this is a big bake-off, we're having. So the meeting was really for everybody. What was the point? Well, the point of that meeting was to get everybody back on track and to try to curb all the blaming. And, well, we've done our part. They need to do their part, so that everybody understands you've all got a part to play, and I'm going to hold all of you accountable. What was the outcome needed? That accountability. The outcome needed for that meeting that she described is, we've got an April 30th deadline. We're going to meet that deadline. Yeah. And if we don't meet the deadline, I'm shutting the thing down.
Yeah.
So those were very specific things. I would encourage our audience, again, don't put too much pressure on a single meeting to do too many things. Answer those questions before, in advance of the meeting. And if you're going to be really great, communicate those in advance of the meeting, so everybody understands, okay, who's this meeting for? What's the point of this meeting, and what outcome do we need from this meeting?
Yeah.
Because so many times we go into these meetings, whether they're 15 minutes or, Lisa's described a 4-hour meeting happening tomorrow on Friday. Well, who wants to spend 4 hours, and we don't know the answer to those questions before we go in?
Yeah. And that's exactly what I had to do. I sent it out saying, this is the priority in order shown that we're going to address these. And I want you to come with your items, and we're going to go round robin. So, and because they were focused, to your point, they were focused on, well, these are the items that are important. And I said, for you. The other person has items that you keep dismissing and wanting to skip over to get to your items. We have to get them all done. So why don't we just, what is less important about their item than your item? And why is there a dog on the bone approach from one person and a dog on the bone approach from another person? And we have to get it all done. So let's just respect each other and work through the item so we can get it knocked out. Instead of, you know what I'm saying? So it was just, you have to line those out and set the expectations. And I'm finding, I had to do that yesterday. I said, this will be our approach in this order. Bring your top items and be ready. And we're going to get this done. And hopefully it won't take 4 hours, but I suspect it will. At 30%, and we need to be 100. in less than 5 business days, yeah, it's going to be, and we've been meeting at least 3 hours a day. Just different, like 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the
Right.
afternoon, because that's all that the time allows. We only have so many blocks, to your point. So yeah, framing them is important, and then holding it accountable. That's what we are going to do. Because I also see, I don't know about you, I see leaders shift. They'll say this is what we're going to do, and then they get off topic. Well, that
Oh, yeah.
frustrates everybody. That seems like a lack of respect for the purpose, because now you've told them what we're going to do, and then you go off in a different path. If it's warranted, that's different. In other words, if this one thing we get on this and this is a hiccup for everybody, you might as well, like you said, an elephant in the room. Let's just get it out and move through it and move on, but don't let them linger on one topic for 2 hours. It needs to have a sense of accomplishment at the
Yeah,
end
well,
of the day.
those are the audibles that I call.
Sure.
You know, I call audibles when something bubbles up and it's like, okay, that was not planned, but that seems to trump, at least in my mind, if I'm
Right.
facilitating the meeting. Okay, we can't ignore that.
Right.
You know, we just can't ignore that. If we ignore that, then we look foolish. My
But
first
people
client,
do, right? But
Oh,
people
yeah.
do ignore them.
they
They
do
just
it.
let them go and go, okay, we're not touching that.
They
Can't touch this.
Yeah, they do it all. They do it all the time. I'm
I'm
in a meeting. And a bunch of CEOs and a CEO, just as the initial. This was kind of a mastermind type group, and everybody's just kind of checking in and going around, and guy mentions that he and his wife are going to get a divorce, and I'm like, and I mean nobody had anything anywhere near that heavy. Everybody's just doing the typical, we did this past weekend or whatever. And this guy's clearly emotional. I mean, near tears. And they just went right on. And I was just a fly on the wall. And I remember thinking, I couldn't do that. There's no way. I mean,
Yeah.
wait a minute. What did you say? Y'all are getting I had a whole lot of questions, not to put the
Right.
man on the spot,
Sure.
but come on,
But he said it for a reason.
Of course he did. So
He probably needed help, support, whatever.
That's right. So that's a case where I would have called an audible. So yeah, I think we should not be so rigid that we can't do that. But it also speaks to the final point that I'll make, and that is the vulnerability of a meeting, and probably the better word is trust.
Yeah.
If you're having a meeting, if you are a leader and you're having a meeting and you don't get any kind of engagement, you got trust issues.
Mm-hmm.
There's just no way around it. You've got trust
If people
issues.
are quiet, there's a problem.
Yep. And if you've got trust issues, then forget meeting etiquette or meeting strategy. You got bigger fish to fry to try to get trust happening so that people feel comfortable and safe to say what they need to say. And for me, it's the death of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Because now, when you should have eyes and ears on everything so that you can avoid your blind spots and help others avoid theirs, now you're real subject to blind spots because people don't feel safe enough to say what needs to be said so that you can avoid them. And I think that's a big deal. I'll give you the last word.
No, as you talk about that, the point here is meetings do serve a purpose. And to me, you have to be thoughtful going into them, what you need to accomplish, and make sure the team knows. They have to know the expectation, know what they need to come with, and you have to keep them on track if off track. Lastly, like you just mentioned, as you navigate meetings, it is so critical to have awareness and listen as you're going around the table and not being afraid to step in and go, okay, hold on, back up. Because like you said, yeah, we're on my update is we're going through a divorce. Okay, next person. Oh yeah, we had a celebration yesterday on the so-and-so and their achievements. And you got to be able to really acutely go, okay, hold on. Man, I'm so sorry you're going through the divorce. Is there any way we can help you? And just open the lines of communication where you have empathy for them. It doesn't have to, completely shift the entire meeting, but you have to have awareness and empathy and compassion for your people in those moments and not be afraid to discuss them, because that is another point on how you build trust. You've got to stay focused. You've got to have a mission in mind, and your people need to know what they're coming with and what they're talking about.
Thanks for watching and listening to Grow Great, the City Government Leadership Podcast. Our website is growgreat.com. For Lisa Norris, I'm Randy Cantrell. We hope you'll subscribe to the show, and we hope you'll tell a friend.